these sessions. Because it is the first run of the class, we'll be doing these once every quarter, at least once every quarter moving forward now. So this recording, I just want to explain right off the bat, there's a different team that ends up downloading and then publishing this recording in Learning Hub. So that usually takes a week or so. Just keep an eye on the S/4HANA Cloud Implementation Learning Room. It'll be posted in about a week. And then in the meantime, I will start uploading my decks after the sessions this week, also in that learning room. Okay, let's talk about an overview and really what differentiates S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition. So Extended Edition actually used to be called, just to give you sort of the naming structure, it used to be called Single Tenant Edition, and then prior to that it was called Private Cloud, because it really is deployed on a private cloud. It's deployed on SAP HANA Enterprise Cloud, and that is a private managed cloud, which basically means that there are additional services that SAP provides to support the technical management of the system. The decision for customers on which deployment option to select depends largely on the degree of standardization versus the degree of flexibility that's required for their enterprise software. So the choice initially is between S/4HANA Cloud and then S/4HANA AnyPremise. AnyPremise refers to deploying on any infrastructure. That means if the customer already has on-premise software, so SAP ECC or SAP ERP on-premise, they may just want to keep, because they've already made the upfront investment of purchasing the servers, they may just want to convert their system, basically upgrade it to the latest version of the ERP, which is S/4HANA, which will ultimately replace SAP ERP in the future, okay? So AnyPremise is essentially on-premise, but there are also the options to have your effectively on-premise solution hosted in a server in a different location. We call those hyperscalers, and that would be somebody like Amazon Web Services. They have data centers and they provide computing resources. It's an infrastructure as a service. So think of it as on the customer's infrastructure or on Amazon Web Services infrastructure or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Platform. So that's completely up to the customer. Extended Edition is a bit different, but it's actually very similar to AnyPremise in terms of the functional scope. The industry scope is the exact same. The languages, the localization, all of that is the exact same as AnyPremise. So Extended Edition is actually much more similar to AnyPremise than it is to S/4HANA Cloud Essentials Edition. So because it is a cloud solution, it still has some degree of requirement for standardization, because the focus of cloud solutions, where they are software as a service solutions or SaaS solutions, so you are paying a subscription fee for specific business processes in the system that have been designed by the cloud provider. So in this case, it's ERP business processes, right? So if you are doing that and the cloud provider is doing some degree of technical management of the back end of your system, especially, there needs to be some degree of standardization so that they're able to manage the technical components of the back end of the system for, hundreds of thousands of customers ultimately at some point in time in the future. So there needs to be a certain degree of standardization. However, being that S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition is inherently single tenant, meaning that you are the only tenant or the only customer that is essentially owning a server. You're pretty much renting the computing resources of a particular server. That means that you are also carrying the costs of maintaining that entire server. So obviously it's going to be more expensive than Essentials Edition, which is multi-tenant, meaning that there are multiple customers sharing the bandwidth of a server. So Extended Edition is private cloud, okay? It's hosted in a private cloud, your own server located in a data center somewhere in the world. Because it is private cloud, however, you're the only tenant, you have a lot more customization than in a multi-tenant server. So that's why we have the much closer similarity to AnyPremise than to Essentials Edition. So the customization is within standards using the provided applications that we have for extensibility, allowing you to do extensibility in the front end of the system, basically in the Fiori Launchpad. However, because you still have this additional degree of visibility into the database, into the back end of the system, you're able to also access the SAP GUI interfaces for the NetWeaver side and the Fiori side. And those are the classic transaction windows, the transaction screens. In fact, you actually have to specifically deploy and configure the Fiori Launchpad itself, which obviously we strongly recommend because from a user experience perspective, it is so much better than the classic transaction code screens. So since you have access to those transaction code screens, you can use the customizing transaction, which is SPRO, S-P-R-O, to do customizing in the backend of the system. However, the huge difference between AnyPremise and Extended is that you cannot do modifications to the SAP core code. That is the major difference. However, you can build new business processes. You can do custom code in the backend with the ABAP Workbench and things like that. So you can see that it is very different in terms of the ability to customize and really the flexibility. We have really large customers. This is targeted towards larger customers in general, just because it is significantly more expensive than Essentials Edition, being that you have your own private cloud in a dedicated server. So in that case, you really have to be a larger customer that has the ability to pay for that. So generally Extended and AnyPremise are targeted towards those larger customers because they are more expensive. So in this situation, we have large customers that decide to go with AnyPremise because they want complete customization control. And then we have a lot of larger customers that go with Extended Edition, like one of our biggest customers, which was kind of the initial flagship deployment of Extended Edition, is Shell. So oil and gas, really focusing in on that particular industry. So S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition is specifically hosted in SAP HANA Enterprise Cloud. HANA Enterprise Cloud is a managed infrastructure as a service. So I mentioned before that you can host AnyPremise on an infrastructure of as a service of your choice between Microsoft Azure, AWS, and GCP. Okay, now in this case, you have to use the infrastructure of HANA Enterprise Cloud. So that is what is creating your private cloud. However, you can actually choose to have this hosted on a different data center than an SAP data center. So first, Extended Edition is in now from that point, you then have the decision as a customer to have this deployed in an SAP data center or a hyperscaler data center. It does not matter. Okay, it sounds like my voice might be breaking up a little bit. Is it back? Is it a bit better? It looks like my audio is coming through. Okay, good, a bit better now. So Cloud Extended Edition is inherently hosted in HANA Enterprise Cloud, okay? But from there, a customer has the decision to deploy it in an SAP data center or a hyperscaler data center. And actually, from a sales perspective, a hyperscaler data center is positioned first rather than an SAP data center. Regardless of the data center you choose to host this solution in, the service level agreement is the exact same. exact same service level agreement regardless of the data center. So SAP still provides those managed services. Okay, and bear with me just a moment. I'm going to disconnect with something that often messes with that can mess with my connection. Okay, let's see if that helps. So some characteristics of S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition specifically are that you have the standardization to a degree, and we strongly recommend following that standardization as much as possible, because the more standardization you have in the system, which means using the SAP best practices, so using our standard business processes, only extending or customizing them through the tools that we provide in the very front end, so in the Fiori Launchpad user interface, because the Fiori Launchpad is only going to allow you to make customizations that are stable in the system. If you try to do something where the only place that you have access to ABAP code is when you create custom business logic, so if you try to just write your own API in there or business add-in, it's just not going to save it if it's not one of the whitelisted business add-ins that you can do for logic. So the system kind of protects itself from any unwanted changes, if you will. And of course, if you go into the back end, into the NetWeaver side, and you do customizing transactions, it's kind of, it's really a crapshoot, I guess, when you come around to installing upgrades. There are 2 upgrades per year. And unlike any premise where you have complete control over if you ever install an upgrade, so upgrades are released every year, but you could feasibly just never install it. There's no requirement because it's completely your own solution. You 100% own it. Obviously, that's really not a best practice because you're never going to get the new processes, new features, new enhancements in your system. But the contrast to that is extended edition, in that there are semi-annual upgrades, but the customer can choose when to install the upgrade, but it is required to install one upgrade at least once every 2 years currently. In the future, the idea is to move towards more of a true cloud model in which you have to install the upgrades when they occur, or at least one of the 2 upgrades per year, which really only benefits the customers because new features, new enhancements, new hot fixes essentially that make the applications enhance how they talk to each other and enhance how they are connecting with each other. So there's really no downside to installing the upgrades. And the way that that happens is that you work closely with SAP Cloud Support. So they will actually reach out to each extended edition customer and say, when do you want to install an upgrade? Maybe, and that's on a yearly basis, they reach out and they're saying, just checking in, you need to install an upgrade. It's been, 3 releases have happened. You're at the end of your 2 years. How do you want to go about doing this? Because they largely take care of all of the technical part of the upgrade. However, if a customer has done a lot of custom code and there are conflicts with the upgrade, they are responsible for fixing that. So it's really only going to cause more issues if you do a lot of custom code using the customizing transactions. And we'll talk a little bit more about the upgrades later today. So subscription licensing, which is consistent with cloud solutions, all of the industries are supported. The extensibility, cloud extensibility framework is to do what you can with the extensibility apps in the Launchpad in the system. And then for anything that's more complex, like building an application, to not do it using the HANA Studio tools and those types of backend tools where you're actually building the app in the database itself, in the NetWeaver layer, but actually building those applications in SAP Cloud Platform. So if we separate the more detailed configurations from the core system, then we are able to install those upgrades every, hopefully twice a year, but at least once a year would be the best preference. So installing those upgrades is never going to affect any integrated system. So if you integrate those super detailed customizations from a third-party system, you will itself. So HANA Enterprise Cloud, we've already talked about this a little bit. Just to reiterate, it's a private managed cloud solution from SAP. So it's not a true infrastructure as a service where the infrastructure as a service is just computing resources. Deploy whatever you want. Here's a private cloud, just computing resources are covered and taken. The Enterprise Cloud is managed services on top of Enterprise Cloud with Extended Edition. But then again, you can choose to have it deployed in an SAP data center or one of these 3 hyperscaler data centers. A little bit about the intelligent ERP. This is really something that we talk about a lot these days. The intelligent ERP is focused on automating as much as possible, especially those really repetitive, boring tasks, because if employees are focused on doing a lot of repetitive, the exact same task over and over again, and it's pretty boring, that always introduces a much higher potential or degree of human error that can come into place. So instead, let's take those really boring tasks and create bots to automate those tasks so that employees can actually focus on the higher value creative tasks that people are better at doing. This is covered by a few different technologies. One is conversational AI, known as SAP Copilot. It was kind of your digital assistant in the solution, and it still is, but we just call it conversational AI now. It's like Siri, Cortana, Alexa, any type of machine learning a tool that the more you talk with it, the more you chat with it, the better it gets at working with you and responding to you. Another tool is intelligent robotic process automation. Intelligent RPA lives in cloud platform, and this would be a separate license tool. So there's a lot of predefined bot workflows for execution. You can have them attended or unattended, so schedule them to run if they're unattended, or attended means that you have to press the button that says go run this process. With machine learning, there is moderate machine learning, which is covered already in the embedded functionality. So things like forecasting and trending, because that has to use machine learning to analyze a large amount of data in order to determine, based on past history or past behavior, this is most likely going to be the future behavior. So data is collected, then the machine learning models can be designed using algorithms, and then you can train the models to become even better over time. There's also SAP Analytics Cloud, which is a really cool tool. SAP Analytics Cloud lives in Cloud Platform, and it provides the single analytics platform to connect all different parts, even the integrated solutions of the business, and provide a single source of truth. So it lets you make end-to-end decisions, analyze, plan, predict, and you've got one user experience across all devices. With the S/4HANA Cloud Essentials Edition, Analytics Cloud is functionally embedded into the analytics applications. So you never have to navigate directly to, I mean, you could, but you don't have to navigate directly to Analytics Cloud in Cloud Platform. However, that does not yet exist, that embedded functionality, in any premise or extended edition. So it would require actually some degree of an additional license depending on the Analytics Cloud functionalities that you want to use. And then you would have to actually go into Cloud Platform directly to use those analytics tools. A quick workaround for that would be just to create a tile on the Fiori Launchpad that is just basically launching the web URL that brings you to that website. Okay, the scope, again, full functional scope, exact same as any premise or on-premise, if you will. So that includes all 25 industries. And this goes directly in line, all of the same functionality as any premise. So covers every single industry, covers all of the same country versions, all of the same languages that any premise covers. Some examples of how you could deploy in a two-tier ERP situation. So some customers choose to try to consolidate multiple systems. Maybe they have subsidiaries, or maybe they just want to separate and keep one system more stable over time, so fewer updates, more control over flexibility. And then they say, we would like to have maybe the semi-annual or quarterly updates or upgrades. And so we would like to have this be more of a system that is innovating faster, so they can separate parts of their business. So two-tier ERP strategy is to use different ERP systems at different layers of the organization. One system typically serves as the global backbone that runs your administrative ERP processes like finance, and a second system would be deployed to run other smaller operational processes, which would allow a company to standardize on one system to meet their functional and budgetary requirements while maintaining flexibility with the business functions in the second system. So with S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition, because it is the exact same functional scope with just a little less capability for customization, so just no modifications in the SAP core code, you could essentially use Extended Edition the same way you would have any premise as the headquarters. So you have the example of headquarters and subsidiary here, where you have any premise or you have Extended Edition as the core headquarters, and then the subsidiary could run on Essentials Edition with a smaller deployed scope. You also have the potential central services model, where perhaps you want to use Essentials Edition for finance as kind of the shared services organization with the rest of the business running on Extended Edition. Maybe this is a smaller scope for just professional services, just that line of business in Essentials Edition, because for Extended Edition, there actually are the professional services is coming from a completely different solution. So professional services in this case is totally different between Extended and Essentials. Another difference would be between the service line of business, or yes, the service line of business, because at this point in time, for whatever reason, there's more functionality for the service area in Essentials than there are for Extended and any premise. So kind of details like that, you could take a look at how you split out the business. Okay. We are going to move on to transition paths and first take a look at some of the questions. Okay, comparing Extended Edition versus any premise hosted by a hyperscaler. They're the same product, the same code, they're both hosted on a private cloud. How are they different? The difference is in the licensing, in the subscriptions. So with any premise, you would have to have a license for the infrastructure as a service, whether that's HANA Enterprise Cloud or it is a non-SAP infrastructure as a service for Amazon Web Services, GCP, or Azure in that case. And then you'd have separate licenses for your actual core ERP software. So the licenses are different. You have more licenses. And then the major difference is that from an extensibility perspective, you cannot modify the SAP core code. And from a cost perspective, any premise is more expensive. Okay, is there a predefined schedule to deliver new features like the ones provided for the quarterly releases of Essentials Edition? There is, and we'll talk about that later today. Okay, And is there a plan to deliver S/4HANA Cloud in a public cloud? No, that would kind of defeat the purpose because it's not possible to have the degree of flexibility and customization in Extended Edition or in a public cloud. I mean, in that case, you would go to Essentials Edition because with a public cloud multi-tenant, you can't make the degree of customizations that you can in Extended because Extended is your own private cloud. You are the only tenant on an entire server. In multi-tenant, you are one of many tenants or many customers sharing the bandwidth of one server. So there has to be much more standardization. Okay, and Cloud Essentials is the former public cloud, also called multi-tenant previously. Okay, and then does SAP publish figures about how many customers use ES, EX, or any premise? I'm not sure. That would be more of a sales type question. There might be some information about that in Partner Edge. I know there's on just the SAP.com web pages, there's different customer focus and customer spotlight stories, but I don't know that the actual number of customers are published for each of them. Generally, more customers are comfortable with Extended Edition than they are with the hyper standardization of Essentials. And Essentials is really, you have more interest from brand new customers, smaller businesses, medium businesses that don't have such established business processes and such a high degree of customization or such a need for very specific industry functionality. So pretty much as soon as you get to specific needs for industry functionality or building your own business processes or a large localization scope, Essentials is off the table. So transitioning to S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition. This is just, I know there's a lot of information on the slide. So we've kind of already talked about this. They're semi-annual upgrades. The TCO or total cost of ownership is the lowest with Cloud Essentials. It's lower with Extended and higher with any premise, partially just because you also have multiple licenses. Customer influenced, of course, means that you are required to install at least one upgrade every 2 years. So that means 3 release upgrades could happen, and then you'd have to install the 4th. And then in that case, you'd have to install the latest upgrade. You can't be like, well, I'll pick the upgrade 2 releases ago. So customer influenced instead of customer led, meaning you decide annual upgrades and you decide if you want to install them ever. IT infrastructure is dedicated, meaning it is a private cloud and SAP manages that private cloud for you. Customization is within standards, more like within extended standards, because you can use the tools on the NetWeaver layer. You can use ABAP Workbench and HANA Studio, and you can use customizing transactions in the SAP GUI transaction screen. For extensions, the extension concept is very Cloud Essentials focused, where regardless of what you're deploying, the idea is try to focus on the cloud extension model as much as possible, which means use the Fiori applications that are available, like custom fields and logic, custom business objects. You can actually create a simplified application using custom business objects. You could tie together kind of a simplified business process by using multiple applications that you generated off of custom business objects, and then use the workflow functionality to tie them together. So there's ways, there's workarounds. It's just a different process than customers are typically used to with the on-premise solution, where it's all done in transaction codes. So there's a bit of retraining that would need to happen in order to kind of understand how to use those Fiori applications, but that will just ensure that the system is as lifecycle stable as possible. And it just makes your life so much easier when it comes to upgrading the system. And if it's easier, people are more likely to do it more regularly, right? With Cloud Extended, these are new implementations. Also, it could be a landscape transformation, which is called selective data transition these days. So essentially, customer has multiple databases, multiple systems floating around, and they're trying to consolidate on hopefully one deployment of the HANA database. So with your implementation approaches, a system conversion is only supported for SAP ERP on-premise to any premise. So on-premise to on-premise, really. So on any infrastructure, though. Okay, so that's the only way where we can technically do the technical conversion process. The tool that you use to migrate your data and complete this process is Software Update Manager, and all of this is taken care of through largely the maintenance planner, which is part of the solution manager landscape transformation, or I can't remember what the exact name of the component is, but landscape component. With a new implementation, you're going to be migrating your data using a tool called the S/4HANA Migration Cockpit. So this is a new deployment of a new system, whether that's any premise, Cloud Essentials, or Cloud Extended. And then a selective data transition is a customer tailored solution service. And that is typically done just because they can be much more complex. It's often done by SAP internally or by partners that have a lot of experience with this, because it requires kind of a multifaceted and creative approach here. But that can be Cloud Extended, Essentials, or any premise, because in this could easily be a two-tier ERP situation. So this is what happens when you do the technical deployment of a solution. A system conversion is just take your existing system and you are converting it to the S/4HANA system. It's basically a big upgrade. A new implementation is, regardless of your legacy systems, you're consolidating data, but you are deploying a brand new clean system, migrating your data fresh there. Selective data transition could be kind of a combination of maybe a system conversion and also a deployment of a clean system and migrating some data specifically to that separate system for a two-tier ERP. In terms of implementation support, there is a program called the SAP Movement Program, or MOVE program, Move to S/4HANA, which was originally targeted more so for system conversions, so on-premise to on-premise, but it is also targeted now more so for all of the versions. It's a little bit more inclusive to cover everything now. So with this movement program, there are a lot of different implementation services that are covered. So SAP Value Assurance provides a specific systematic approach to accelerating the entire implementation, so targeted more towards smaller, mid-size, large, or strategic transformations for customers. The SAP Model Company is something that is only used with Extended and any premise. And the Model Company is referring to the SAP best practices for specific industries. So for those 25 industries, there are actually dedicated Model Company systems that you can deploy with each of those specific industries. So you could deploy one industry, or you could have a custom deployment of the Model Company that encompasses multiple industries in one specific system. Just keep in mind that we'll talk more about this later, but that particular system can take up to 6 weeks to be delivered, because it is often pretty customized in that case. So the Model Company provides pre-configured, ready-to-use end-to-end. It's an end-to-end reference system for different industries or lines of business. And this could be deployed either as a trial system, just to get an experience and to figure out if that's going to work for a customer. Or it can also be deployed for, well, I could say, and it can also be deployed for the implementation itself. So this can actually be, you can deploy this Model Company system and then build your own custom business processes on top of that, as well as customize the Model Company standard processes that always is going to make it more difficult to upgrade your system. So we don't recommend doing that as much as possible. But you can do that with the model company. And that's what a lot of customers that focus in specific industries like Shell that focuses on largely just oil and gas, they have that specific model company deployed and then built their own customizations on top of that based on processes that they wanted to keep from their on-premise ERP system. And then just have it hosted in HANA Enterprise Cloud with those additional managed services. So the model company is a really great resource. It's what we previously called the rapid deployment solutions. So rather than, it would be incredibly painful to just deploy a clean system and build all of your business processes from scratch if you couldn't do a system conversion. So the model company just gives you a reference baseline. With the qualified partner solution packages, these packages are only supported to be implemented for extended edition and any premise, because these often include industry-specific customizations, extensions, or integrations. These qualified partner solutions have to go through a really stringent process to get certified or to get qualified. So certified is for the integrations and APIs, and qualified is for new applications or new business processes that are specific to an industry or something just very detailed based on that partner's experience. So they can say, this is my new application. I know that I've tested it and I know that it works and it's lifecycle stable within Cloud Extended Edition. And then it goes through a very detailed review process. And actually part of that review process is that SAP will say, have you considered just deploying this and having it hosted in Cloud Platform? Would it work to be hosting it in Cloud Platform so that then customers could just subscribe to it in Cloud Platform? So, and that application would be decoupled from the SAP core. So rather than building it, hard coding it directly in the system, which of course makes the system more unstable, how about considering decoupling it? So there is sort of pushes to, again, move towards that cloud-based extensibility or cloud-based integration model. But those qualified partner solution packages are only supported for extended or for any premise. Just keep that in mind. Partner conversion factories. This helps support repeatedly or repeated delivery of 6 specifically system conversions to S/4HANA. So on-premise to on-premise or on-premise to any premise. And it focuses on making the system conversion process more affordable, more efficient, and scalable, so that we can have essentially more of a defined methodology from the partner perspective and that system conversion process. We've got experts that are really good at repeatedly doing that process, so they can kind of over time hone and make the process as quick and fast as possible. From an SAP perspective, we also have what's called the Customer Care Program in the Regional Implementation Group. This supports customers with product-related clarifications and shares implementation experiences to help them have a successful go-live. However, this is something where you have to apply to the program, and only a small number of applications can be accepted because there is this specialized focus from this internal SAP internal customer care team. So the Regional Implementation Group delivers remote sessions with customers during the implementation, and the Customer Care Program supports in the project planning phase and kicking off the implementation. So it's available specifically to existing SAP ERP customers who are migrating to S/4HANA, whether that's system conversion, selective data transition, or new implementations. There's also this deployment option for an SAP-led deployment, and we also have partner-led deployments. So the SAP-led deployment, essentially upgraded solution, is called SAP Advanced Deployment. So there's extra support where you have leadership and services delivered by SAP to have a specific partner that leads the entire project. So essentially you have your project manager from SAP for the implementation project. And that focuses on outcome-focused services, proactive support, and using intelligent tools like machine learning, robotic process automation as much as possible. And that's converting your current SAP ERP system from on-premise to on-premise, or just even starting from scratch. Selective data transition is a really great opportunity to use advanced deployment. Advanced deployment, if you have purchased this particular sort of upgrade to the implementation service, just something that comes along with it is what's called the Operations Control Center. And along with the Operations Control Center, there's also a Mission Control Center, which is deployed several different areas all over the world. And it's truly like if you think of NASA and the shuttle launches, how there's a Mission Control Center with a bunch of people in the same room, all on their computers. It is exactly like that. These Mission Control Centers are specific to supporting customers that have this advanced deployment option. So Operations Control Center, Mission Control Center, and that's something that can be deployed and integrated with your solution manager, application lifecycle management solution. And then for partner-led projects, there is, obviously we have Partner Edge, and there's a really tight integration and connection between Partner Edge and our internal implementation consultants. And so that partner program really supports partners in making sure that the implementations are consistent and really high quality, and provides as many resources and training as possible so that partners can lead projects, implementation projects that are incredibly high quality. Okay, we will go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then when we come back to from our break, we're going to talk about release upgrades and system landscapes, and we'll probably also have time to talk about application lifecycle management today. So before the break, let's take a look at the questions that have come in. Does the SAP model company need a separate license if you already have Solution Manager? The model company and Solution Manager are not related at all. If you were to deploy a model company in a sandbox to do things like your fit to standard workshops, which we'll talk about the different deployment options for fit to standard workshops tomorrow when we talk about the Activate methodology. So in that particular situation, deploying the model company is something that you would deploy via Solution Builder. So Solution Builder can of course be integrated with Solution Manager, but it's functionally kind of its own separate solution. And the model company needs a separate, it does not need a separate license actually, because deployment of a model company with more of a restricted scope, so basically with the core enterprise scope, not industry specific, or not the custom model company that combines multiple industries, or a custom enterprise scope. So the core enterprise scope model company is included in the subscription fee for extended edition. So if that worked for a customer, that would be, there's no additional cost to that. Okay. Is the model company the same thing as implementing data from the best practices? It is. It is effectively SAP best practices. It's like the rapid deployment solutions with those industry specific and line of business specific, basically a baseline to start from. So technically they are best practices because SAP has predefined the business process, which you can then modify, right? But that is really standard business processes that are deployed to give you a baseline to start with. The other option would be based on, and we'll talk about the digital discovery assessment more tomorrow, because that's part of the Activate methodology roadmap. But based on the discovery assessment, customers work with a salesperson to essentially identify the different line of business areas and the different industries that they will require for their implementation. And so that actually, you actually go through individual best practice scope items or business processes, and now we're trending towards calling them business capabilities. So in that situation, you are actually flagging and identifying individual business capabilities, if you will. So you could also, instead of deploying a model company, you could just deploy those individual business capabilities that were identified in the discovery assessment. So two different options for your baseline, and you would deploy both with Solution Builder. Okay. The PowerPoints will be available in the learning room after the session. Not all of them, just the PowerPoints for today's session. And then I'll do that each day. The model company is only available for extended and on-premise. That is correct, because the model company is for specific industries. It can also be just the model company for the core enterprise scope, but it is really shines when it comes to those 25 different industry scope areas. If a customer is looking for a lot of customization, wants to be with cloud, the best possible solution is extended. That is correct. Absolutely. Okay, we'll go ahead and pause here. I've got about 53 minutes after the hour. Let's go with, pretend it's 55 minutes after the hour, take like a 12-minute break here. So please come back at 5 minutes after the top of the hour. Yeah. Okay, so take about a 12-minute break, come back at 5 minutes after the top of the hour, and we will pick up with release upgrades and system landscapes from there. All right, I will talk to you all in about 12 minutes. All right, come on back from break. You enjoyed our fun facts. And let's keep moving forward. So we are now talking about release upgrades and system landscapes. So first off, I just wanted to have a comparison slide to help you see when those release upgrades happen. And essentially for every other Essentials Edition quarterly upgrade, you're going to have an Extended Edition upgrade. And because Extended Edition is so functionally the exact same as any premise, with the exception of you not being able to do modifications to the SAP core code in the NetWeaver layer and in the database. It actually is every other release upgrade is based on the feature pack stacks that are released. So in February, we have 2002. We had that 2002 upgrade. The next upgrade is 2008, which is based on the last feature pack stack. So each upgrade is essentially based on the previous feature pack stack because they're released on a slightly different schedule. The semi-annual releases, currently customers are required to implement at least one upgrade every 2 years. I know these pictures are a little blurry, but there is something to support with the upgrades because, again, the technical management of the back end of the system is part of those managed services that are inherently provided because HANA Enterprise Cloud is a managed private cloud. For Extended Edition, customers are strongly encouraged to attend an innovation workshop at least once a year. And those 2 upgrades that have happened that year will be covered. These innovation workshops or innovation services are included, of course, in the subscription fees. And that would be analysis of new features, which is essentially the feature pack stacks, the past 2. The system impact of those new features and functions are analyzed for customers. The roadmap for implementation is proposed and is discussed as a group, so customers are able to really share information with each other, but the support team also, whoever is your primary support contact that works with your primary IT contact from the customer side, that would be a little weird. If each customer had their own personal ET. But that person that works with the primary IT contact from the customer side is also going to develop a unique plan for each customer with the customers. But this is more of a time for idea sharing. So customers can kind of learn from each other and come up with additional ideas. Relevant features and functions are presented and discussed. Planning and coordination of those upgrades are discussed, and planning of customer needs and feedback. A roadmap is created for each individual customer, and the upgrade is then planned. So coordination and execution of upgrade activities, including pre and post-processing activities and checks, of course, some of those have to be executed by the customer because SAP only has so much access to the system. Once it gets to the user data and just general data in the system, SAP doesn't have access to touch any of that from a privacy perspective. It is a 3-system landscape when it comes to Extended Edition. With any premise, you can really have any number of landscapes. It is inherently a 3-system, no, it is inherently a 3-system landscape. And then you can request additional landscapes for things like a training specific landscape. So in this case, it's just those 3 system landscapes, which also differs from Essentials, which has only 2 landscapes. The quality system is used for testing. Production system is of course used for your productive activities. And then the development system is used for developing, figuring out what you want to use, so building new business processes, new extensions, and then transporting to quality to test thoroughly, and then transporting to production to use. The tasks that are performed by SAP are things like service management, infrastructure management, database management for the HANA database, and any core technical operations like security management, release management, the Fiori setup, and maintenance, proactive services, server provisioning, third-party software that happens to be part of the HANA Enterprise Cloud contract, and then any general NetWeaver operations. The customer responsibilities for an upgrade are to participate in those innovation workshops and any preparation or alignment calls with the assigned SAP support contact that's going to be executing a lot of these activities, executing activities that are just specifically in the customer namespace, configuring any Fiori applications that are implemented further, so permissioning them, assigning them to end users to use, executing any regression and integration tests using the Solution Manager testing suite, doing end user acceptance testing, executing production smoke tests, and also confirming the service execution once it's been complete. This is the general upgrade process. It can actually take for a full system upgrade between 29 and 47 days, depending on the complexity of the landscape. So it is much more time intensive than you would have for an Essentials Edition upgrade, which literally happens over a weekend. Typically, the bulk of the upgrade happens just on Saturdays. So this 29 to 47 days is based on the fact that customers with Extended Edition have a much more complex system than those with Essentials. So SAP conducts the technical upgrade of all systems. The time estimate for each of those systems would be quality assurance, 12 to 23 days. Production is approximately 7 days. Upgrade development, or in the development system, is 10 to 17 days. And each of those upgrades for the system includes working with HANA Enterprise Cloud and upgrading that, and then application management services. The customer is then responsible for doing any testing activities, which would be pretty detailed because you're going to be testing the end-to-end business processes, whether you're doing manual tests, which you can assign those tests through the Solution Manager testing suite, or if you're setting up automated tests in Solution Manager. So testing quality system, 5 to 15 days, testing production system, hopefully just 1 day because you've done most of the testing in quality, and then testing development 1 to 5 days. For system landscapes, this is going to cover all of the potential landscapes. What we saw here was just the landscapes that you have after implementation, so after go live. So this is going to be all potential landscapes that you could use at a given point in time throughout the implementation. In the discover phase, you can deploy a free trial system for S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition. You're going to deploy it through something called SAP Cloud Appliance Library. The Cloud Appliance Library is an online repository of pre-configured SAP solutions that can be consumed in the cloud pretty much instantly. It really depends, the setup time depends on how complex the solution is. So a lot of customers will actually use this to deploy the latest feature pack stack of the solution and test it out prior to actually implementing the solution in their systems itself. So Cloud Appliance Library is where you can deploy any of the model companies, and it's also where you can deploy just the enterprise scope system. And you're actually not deploying any dedicated system for extended. You're actually just going to deploy the S/4HANA AnyPremise, the latest release of the AnyPremise system. So the appliance library runs by having the landscapes, and then you deploy the landscape on an infrastructure as a service. So in the case of S/4HANA AnyPremise, it can be hosted in Amazon Web Services, Azure, or Google Cloud Platform. So even though this trial is actually free for 30 days, and after that you would go into subscription licensing, you do have to have a license for Amazon Web Services, Azure, or Google Cloud Platform. So you're still to a degree paying for it, but the actual S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition or any premise software is free for 30 days. So you can explore the system. So this trial system is really used in the discover phase to support with just exploring the system, especially exploring the model company systems. Open to customers, partners, SAP employees, public users. Let's go ahead and see if this link works for me. Okay, that trial system link is not working. Okay. This is actually not the one we want because that is the trial for Cloud Essentials. This is the one, actually, the on-premise trial, and I will send that link to you in chat. Okay, so once you go in here and you do start the 30-day trial, you're going to jump over to the Cloud Appliance Library. You fill out the registration information, and then it's going to bump you over to Cloud Appliance Library, where you select what you want to deploy. Okay. A little more information on Cloud Appliance Library. Now we're going to go directly to the tenant. All right, so it automatically defaults to 1909 Feature Pack Stack 01 for the solution. If I go to create, then it's going to require that I put in one of these three cloud providers. Okay. With the model company, so we've talked a little bit about the model company. The model company is SAP best practices because it is pre-delivered business processes. Those processes just focus in specific dedicated industries rather than generally for different lines of business, which is kind of the standard, what you think of standard best practices. So it's a pre-packaged, ready to use end-to-end reference solution for S/4HANA. There are many different model companies to choose from, 25 in fact, well, 25 plus some more because there's also just the core enterprise scope that are tailored to specific industry or lines of business to support customers in experiencing that pre-built S/4HANA system with the focus on the requirements that they specifically need for on-premise, cloud extended, or hybrid deployments. In the sales phase, customers will complete the digital discovery assessment, which flags the SAP best practices to address their needs. However, it's actually identifying individual scope items or business capabilities. So these predefined best practices, you can choose to activate each one individually or choose to say, I just want to deploy the entire model company and go from there. Okay, so it's just two different ways of deploying best practices. The model companies have, it's delivered as a service, so subscription fee. It has the foundation, so the industry reference architecture, accelerators like configuration, how-to guides, test demo scripts, and implementation tools. It also has that business content. So if you deploy a trial of the model company, it has pre-delivered business content so that you can go through and run through the test execution processes and see what it would look like in real life for you. You can also then, once you get into the prepare phase of the implementation, so the customer's purchased extended edition at that point, you can also choose to deploy the model company, a model company in a sandbox. And when you deploy it in the sandbox, you're then going to use that sandbox model company system for the fit to standard workshops. So the business consultants, the implementation consultants would lead the workshops with that, with the model company data. So it again still has that pre-delivered content, but you could create and add additional content that's specific to the customers. You can then also deploy the model company for the actual implementation itself in what's called an exploration system, which is the same as a development system. Early adopter customers that have implemented the model companies thus far have found out that the speed of deployment has increased quite a bit. So it's reduced the total discovery phase time from around 65 or more days to around 15 days, and the delivery time from 24 days down to, 24 months down to about 12 months. So 2 years versus 1 year. There's also the ability to have a more in-depth and higher quality fit to standard workshop. So it reduces custom development efforts by around 30%, just based on the numbers and data that we've collected. Makes it easier to make decisions because you've got this pre-configured baseline. So it actually also decreased the number of meetings that needed to happen because you're not focusing so much on building custom business processes and really just adopting the standard processes. It also improved the project scoping. So it made sure that there were pretty confident estimates on the specific number of licenses that were needed. And just some examples of model company offerings are model company for agribusiness, airline back offices, automotive, chemicals, core retail, consumer products, manufacturing, EWM or extended warehouse management for industries, finance, high tech, human resources, mill products, oil and gas, utilities, wholesale distribution. Those are just a few of them. With the model company service offerings, they can have different purposes, right? So in the discover phase, you've got the trial edition, which is just we're exploring. We're trying to figure out what's going to work best for us. We know that Essentials is too standardized and doesn't have the scope that we need. So that solution is hosted in first cloud, the Cloud Appliance Library service, which is then deployed via a third-party infrastructure as a service. It is free for 30 days and 10 users. It is available within 2 to 3 hours with a dedicated administrator account. And of course, you can assign any additional permissions for those 10 users. Deployed via CAL, of course, and hosted in HANA Enterprise Cloud, AWS, or SAP Demo Cloud. We also saw Google Cloud Platform and Microsoft Azure. Then once you get to the explore phase, so we've purchased, customers purchased the solution, we're beginning to implement, we've got prepare phase, explore phase, now we're doing explore phase fit to standard workshops. In the event that the implementation scope is not clearly defined yet, the model company is used, it's deployed in Sandbox, and it's used as that pre-built reference solution for specific industries. Production. This is deployed via the Cloud Appliance Library. If you want to use it on-prem, get a Blu-ray disc that you can install in customer server. And oops. Okay, it would help if I unmuted myself. So we'll start at the beginning with this slide. The good news is that we've actually already talked about the trial edition on the previous slide. So trial edition is used for the discover phase. No purchase has been made. This is just the customers exploring the potential, the possibilities. So it's a hosted solution for discovery, for show and tell. It's deployed in the Cloud Appliance Library, and then it's hosted in HANA Enterprise Cloud, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, or the SAP Demo Cloud. It's, and that hosted solution is available for free for 30 days. And then after that, it would be subscription licensing and up to 10 users. So you can get full administrative permissions, and then you can assign any other necessary permissions to the other 9 users, and it's available within 2 to 3 hours. So it takes a little bit of time just to generate the system and fully set it up. So now let's say that the customer has purchased Extended Edition. We are in the implementation. We've already gone through the prepare phase. Now we're in the explore phase, and fit to standard workshops are being delivered to identify the customer implementation scope. So customer data, like data that needs to be migrated, additional information like the integrations that need to be set up. Actually, that would already be identified earlier on in the discovery assessment, but just really confirming those integrations, identifying extensions or customizations that need to be made, business roles, permissions that need to be assigned, any restriction of those permissions. So all of that's identified in the fit to standard workshops. In the event that the customer doesn't have their implementation scope clearly defined yet, they can deploy a model company for a specific industry, or for one industry, or the enterprise scope, which is included in the subscription license. So no cost there. They can deploy it in a sandbox. It already has preloaded data, configuration guides, additional resources. One thing you want to keep in mind is that you cannot do a system copy from this particular model company to the dev, quality, or production. If they said, we already have a clearly defined implementation scope, or you could, of course, have both of these situations happen together. So we're going to use the prepackaged one in the explore phase, then in the implementation in the realize phase. Now we have defined our scope. So either they have a clearly defined scope already, or they define it through the explore phase. We have a clearly defined scope. We know that we need 3 different industry solutions deployed. We need this many countries deployed, so localizations. So they know exactly what they want. That can be built also in a sandbox as a custom assembly. So it's going to be a combination of the industry and line of business specific content that is assembled for customer specific needs. However, because it is a custom solution, you need to expect at least 6 weeks for the custom assembly to be delivered. In this case, because it is a custom assembly and the scope is going to be precisely defined and needs to match the target landscape, you can actually do a system copy from the model company to the development, quality, and production systems. So it kind of cuts down on an extra step where you'd have to, in this case, define the scope in prepackaged, and then in the realize phase, get a custom assembly likely. So in that custom assembly, it's also not going to have any, doesn't need to have any data. You can say, we don't want any data because we just want to do a system copy, and from there, get ready and move forward with our implementation. The offerings here that are included in the standard implementation costs would be multi-country edition, or multinational company, or single country edition. So multi-country, multinational would be customers with that international footprint that need parallel accounting capabilities to cover group and local reporting capabilities. It's an out-of-the-box implementation accelerator for those international corporations. You have up to 42 countries that can be deployed. Basic scope is finance, manufacturing, asset management, so core lines of business. And then you can have the optional scope of additional things to activate, but that's going to require additional costs for those additional packages. The supported business processes are never going to be the exact same for all countries, because of course some countries have specific requirements for unique processes. So the supported processes will vary by country. Group GAAP is the leading accounting principle. So one leading or group ledger and two local ledgers for local GAAP are supported. One group currency that can be adjusted to the customer's needs, and they can have local currencies per country. And then with the fiscal year variant, it's the group fiscal variant and the local fiscal year variant in a second local ledger. With the single country edition, customers with a single country footprint that need country-specific localization content for that country. One country is supported, same functional scope. The local GAAP is one leading local ledger, and one ledger for IFRS reporting can be used, group and local currency per country, and then the fiscal year variant is adjusted based on the customer needs. You just don't have the local fiscal year variant in the second local ledger because you don't have additional countries. Okay, a couple questions in chat. In the prepare phase, is this the sandbox or the starter environment? There is no starter system, or at least nothing has that name in extended edition or any premise. So the landscapes are really the same as any premise. With essentials, that's the only case where you see a starter system. And the starter system has a model company, so it just has preloaded best practices based on the scope of what the customer purchased. So the business processes they've purchased are activated, and there's some preloaded data. So with the model company, in this case, it's just a lot more detailed, where you can have the multinational country deployed, the single country edition deployed with the core enterprise scope. And it can be prepare phase is the sandbox or starter. So in the prepare phase, you would deploy a, if you're going to use the model company, you would deploy it in a sandbox system at the end of the prepare phase, so that the consultants can prepare the system for the fit to standard workshops, which happen at the beginning of the explore phase. The system copy, is it done from Cloud Appliance Library, the sandbox? It's done from the sandbox, but it can only be done if you've done a custom assembly. Okay, and I think we answered the S/4HANA Essentials. It has the model company, but it's based specifically on the scope items that the customer has purchased in the discovery assessment. Okay. For the release, the 3-system landscape, this is just the standard visual that we have for the extended edition releases with the quality system, production, and development system. So first, things are implemented in the quality system for that detailed testing, user acceptance testing, and all of that. And then they are implemented in the production system, and then you'd import them last in the development system. It's very similar, almost the exact same landscapes that you'd see in any premise, but any premise, they often would request additional specific landscapes that go along for this landscape is just for training purposes. In this case, we just have the 3. You could, of course, request an additional test landscape if you wanted to, but it would not have a transport path that connects it to quality production or development. Okay, in Essentials, you have stage data or supplied by SAP for the discovery session with the client. With Essentials, you wouldn't have a model company in the discover phase. You can just explore the S/4HANA Cloud free trial. which is not deployed via CAL or Cloud Appliance Library. It is just a web-based tool. It's a shared landscape, and it has specific guided scenarios that you go through. So you wouldn't deploy Model Company in the discover phase there, but you'd go through the digital discovery assessment with a salesperson and go through each of those individual business processes. You only have the Model Company in that case in the starter system, which is after the implementation has started. Okay, on slide 9, you see Solution Manager and Cloud ALM. Both are not used in Extended Edition. Cloud ALM is the implementation portal, implementation portal. Cloud Application Lifecycle Management Implementation Portal, or CALM. That is currently only available for Cloud Essentials. However, it's on the roadmap to eventually be available for Extended Edition. But it doesn't, it's really just the project management capability of Solution Manager. It does not have near the comprehensive functionality of Solution Manager. So at this point in time, and probably for the foreseeable future, people are likely going to use Solution Manager for implementing Extended. Okay, and then you would normally develop first in dev. That is correct, but with the upgrade, the most important thing is to do comprehensive testing. So you're going to do the upgrade. The upgrade would be done first in the quality system so that all of the testing can get taken care of. And then production is upgraded. And then you would go into dev. So you don't want to be developing and trying to transport from dev to quality, quality to production during the upgrade. Everything is put on hold during that time. Digital discovery assessment, we'll talk about that tomorrow with the Activate methodology. It is used for Extended Edition as well as Essentials. It's just the implementation portal that is only used for Essentials right now. Okay. For clarity, on-premise 1909 on a hyperscaler is not equal to Cloud Extended 2002. It depends on if you're installing the feature pack stacks that are, or support pack stacks that are released every quarter. So if you install those for on-premise that are released every quarter, then it would be the same. Okay, just to confirm, HANA Cloud Essentials. So S for HANA Cloud Essentials does have the Model Company. It does not have what you're looking at on the screen right now. It does not have this Model Company, which makes sense because this Model Company is for multinational corporations and also for industries. It can be for single corporations or for national companies, but the Model Company in Essentials is only used once a customer's purchased the solution. And the Model Company is in the starter system. So it's what we call the starter system, and it just has preloaded sample data and whatever the customer's purchased. So if they've purchased the professional services line of business scope, if they've purchased manufacturing, several scope items from there, they've purchased supply chain, finance. So depending on the scope items they have purchased, which is identified in the discovery assessment, that is what is deployed in the starter system, which is used for the fit to standard workshops. In this situation, a Model Company can be deployed in the discover phase, which is before the customer purchases the solution. So it can be used for exploring the possibilities in the trial system, which is really just, this. This is the trial, and you can choose to deploy just, the page would still show what we're looking at, it would be you could just deploy this, which is the core enterprise scope, or you could deploy one of these with a model company. So like here's the model company for agribusiness. These are only for on any premise or for cloud extended because both solutions have the exact same functional scope. Okay, and then does extended have the test automation tool like in Essentials? It does not. You would use the Solution Manager test suite. Okay, so for the system landscapes, you have the sandbox, which is after the purchase has been made. So we are now in the prepare phase, the end of the prepare phase. And let me just show you, we haven't quite gotten here yet. But there is a dedicated roadmap in the roadmap viewer. You'd be following this roadmap, but you'd be using Solution Manager to manage the implementation itself. But there's a dedicated roadmap for Extended Edition. Here's the link. And if you go through these phases, you'll see where things are listed out. So Cloud Trial, that's deploying a trial system through the Cloud Appliance Library. In the prepare phase, towards the end of the prepare phase, you would get your initial system for fit to standard workshops, which is going to be a sandbox system or an exploration system. It's a little bit confusing once you get to this step because it essentially says you'll have a sandbox or you'll have an exploration system. The exploration system is basically the same thing as a development system. The terms are, for whatever reason, used interchangeably. When you look at this roadmap, with any premise, it's pretty clearly stated that it's just the dev system. They don't use the exploration system terminology. So exploration is basically the same as the development system. However, it's like a development system, and then once you get into after the fit to standard workshops, you would deploy another one. So it's just a bit different. But this instructions that are mentioned here essentially just say the customer can deploy whichever one they prefer. So I assume there's some type of, there might be a difference from a technical perspective that they discuss with the SAP support group, the SAP Service Center in that particular situation. So here's the specific task for receiving that initial system, very end of the prepare phase, because the implementation team needs a little time to prepare any additional system configurations, prepare the integration setup, and then in the explore phase, you get into doing the fit to standard analysis with that system. So the sandbox system, you could build it from scratch, which we really don't recommend. It would be a giant pain and really be spending so much time in the prepare phase when you really want to spend the bulk of your time in the explore phase, delivering the workshops, collecting all of the data you need to then execute on everything in the realize phase and complete the implementation itself. So build from scratch or deploy best practices that were identified in the discovery assessment one by one, or deploy a comprehensive model company, the single country, or the national or the multinational model company with the enterprise scope. So you use this to deliver the fit to standard workshops in the explore phase. The exploration or development system can be used to deliver fit to standard workshops instead of the sandbox. This, once you get into finishing the fit to standard workshops, you then get a development system, which you use to test functionality, custom configurations in the realize phase. The quality assurance system is prepared in the realize phase. Configurations, extensions are built in the dev system and then transported to quality. You then do validation and thorough testing in quality before you transport to production. So there's a transport path between dev, quality, and production. Okay, that's all for systems. And we'll talk about application lifecycle management in the last 15 minutes. Okay, questions in chat. What is the latest naming or technologies? Is it just ES versus EX instead of MTE, STE? Yeah, so used to be S/4HANA Cloud, Public Cloud. Then it was S/4HANA Cloud Multi-Tenant Edition, which is pretty clear because it is deployed on a multi-tenant server, multiple tenants or customers sharing the bandwidth of that server. Now it is S/4HANA Cloud Essentials. Extended used to be S/4HANA Cloud Private Cloud, which also makes sense because it is a private cloud. You are the only tenant on that server. Then it was called S/4HANA Cloud last year. It was called S/4HANA Cloud Single Tenant Edition. And now it is called S/4HANA Cloud Extended Edition. And HANA Enterprise Cloud is not a platform as a service. Our platform as a service, there's only one solution for that we have, and that is SAP Cloud Platform. So platform as a service is a development landscape. HANA Enterprise Cloud is an infrastructure as a service, which means computing resources to then host whatever solutions. We call HANA Enterprise Cloud, like bring your own license, BYOL. So bring whatever additional SAP solutions you want to deploy. You can host on-premise solutions in the cloud in an infrastructure as a service. It is different than Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform or Azure because it has the managed services for SAP products. So you can say, hey, SAP, I want you to deploy an additional customer namespace, and then I want to transition and basically use that one instead of my current namespace. So additional managed services. Any technical part of the services are taken care of by SAP. And that's all based on the service level agreement. Okay, in the past, SAP, for data migration, will Extended have access to Object Modeler? Yes, for creating additional custom migration objects, you have access to the Migration Object Modeler. In the past, SAP suggested not to have data or business objects in Dev. If we use Dev for fit to standard, will we get data there? Well, ultimately, you would need an empty system with no data in it, right? Because you're going to then populate the system with the customer data. So you'd have to deploy an additional sandbox. You could copy the configurations or basically just activate the model company best practices again. And then, I'm sorry, sandbox is for fit to standard. So after, if you use the sandbox for fit to standard, you would then activate whatever model company or best practices you wanted in development, and then that's connected to quality and production through a transport path. If you used the exploration system, I think the gist is that it's called the exploration system. If you use it for, like the sandbox, if you use it for the fit to standard, and then you'd actually have to deploy an additional separate dev system that's connected to quality and production. It's a little confusing. I'm actually going to ask the Activate team that maintains that roadmap to clarify the systems in a little more detail and use one consistent term. Okay. In Extended, the dev continues to be available. On Cloud, it's only for 30 days. So in Cloud Essentials, it's not called the development system because it's not a development system. In Cloud Essentials, you have a starter system that has preloaded data so that you can deliver fit to standard workshops. Once you then deploy the quality system to actually configure the customer system and then get the production system, 30 days after you get production, your starter system just goes away. So it's decommissioned after 30 days because you don't need it anymore. Customer now has quality in production. So in Extended Edition, you have a 3-tier landscape, just like in any premise. You have the core 3-tier landscape, and your implementation systems that you use would be dev, quality, and production. Okay, let's talk about application lifecycle management tools. So as opposed to Essentials Edition, if you're more familiar with that, we do not use what's called CALM, or the Cloud Application Lifecycle Management Implementation Portal. This is CALM right here. It is, however, eventually planned on the roadmap to support Extended Edition, but it's only project management capabilities. It does not have, application operations, business process operations. There's a ton of really deep functionality in Solution Manager for monitoring things like integrations. Cloud ALM doesn't do that at all. So for Extended Edition, you're still going to want to use Solution Manager, I would say, for the foreseeable future. So Solution Manager is an on-premise ALM platform to support on-premise and hybrid landscapes. It truly has a huge range of capabilities. It also has recently been enhanced with what's called Focus Build and Focused Insights. They are optional add-ons that you can choose to activate and integrate. No additional cost for those add-ons. Focused Build is an agile project methodology tool. Focused Build, you could basically choose to use the project management component of Solution Manager, which is based on which is actually just integrated with the SAP, I'm blanking on the name, basically the EPPM solution, the Enterprise Project Planning solution, or you could use Focus Build. The Focused Insight solution is for more after go live, and that allows the support team to build really detailed and also use a lot of pre-delivered pre-delivered dashboards and build their own customer specific dashboards for monitoring of the system. There's also a separate solution, which is Focused Run, and it's a spin-off of Solution Manager with out-of-the-box insights and pre-delivered analytics. This is targeted to businesses that need high volume system and application monitoring. So those are for businesses that support a lot of customers. So those are partners that their company is basically to support a lot of customers, kind of an external service desk, right? So this is a great solution for those service providers or for really large customers that have a very complex integrated landscape and a lot of different solutions within their landscape. The responsibility for system management, I just wanted to do a comparison to help you understand exactly what is taken care of and what the customer responsibility is for system management. With on-premise, everything is managed by the customer. If the customer decided to have the on-premise solution hosted in an infrastructure as a service like AWS, then the infrastructure as a service solution would cover the IT infrastructure management, and then everything else would be managed by the customer. With a private cloud, so in this case, we're talking about HANA Enterprise Cloud, the customer is responsible for business process management and application management. System management is taken care of. IT infrastructure is taken care of. This is just part of the core HANA Enterprise Cloud functions, right? This is just standard. This is taken care of right away. This stuff is based on the service level agreements because there are some components within system management where it's not inherently done by SAP, but customers essentially have these credits, or they can purchase these credits for what's called enhanced managed services. And with these enhanced managed services credits, or hours actually, per month, they can say, hey, can you take this task? We don't want to do this task. Can you go ahead and do this task? So there's a variety of system management tasks that are automatically covered with the HANA Enterprise Cloud Service Level Agreement. And then there are a few tasks that you can say, hey, I want you to do this for me. But you have to use these enhanced managed services credits. With infrastructure as a service, it can be public cloud actually, or it can be private cloud. Typically when we talk about it, we're talking about private cloud, managed by the customer up until, so part of system management. And then this core IT infrastructure is taken care of by the provider. Platform as a service, so we're talking about SAP Cloud Platform. The business context and up to the applications is taken care of by the customer. And then the middleware platform is done by the provider. And then everything else is also done by the provider. For software as a service, all of the stuff up to middleware platform and application management is automatically done by SAP. And then from an application perspective, this is based on the service level agreement, because again, there's some components that are done by customer, some components that are automatically part of the SLA taken care of by SAP. Generally, when it comes to just like the software perspective, I won't say generally, always, when it comes to the software perspective, SAP installs the standard software, installs the updates to the software. The applications are really the front end, though, the Fiori applications in the Launchpad that you use. And I really like showing this to give you a visual. This is the One Support Launchpad to see exactly the detail that you can have into the function of HANA Enterprise Cloud. Obviously, my Launchpad is not connected to a HANA Enterprise Cloud system, so it's not super interesting. But you have this workspace area. You can see the backup status. You can see the database performance. You can see the IT calendar of when things will be installed, especially if you've planned an upgrade with your IT support contact. This is standard for Essentials Edition as well. The IT calendar, you just access it in a different website called the Cloud Trust Center. The landscape data, security patches, user statistics, the capacity CPU, capacity management, availability. There are a few additional applications as well besides this. And then there's additional monitoring of HANA Enterprise Cloud in Solution Manager. So this is just the support Launchpad. So that gives you more of a clear perspective of the visibility that Extended Edition customers have into the backend landscape, even though SAP is managing most of this stuff for the customers on their behalf. That's just part of the services that are managed for HANA Enterprise Cloud, but they have visibility into this data. Okay, questions in chat. Can we elaborate on middleware platform in private cloud? What is it that the customer needs to take care of? The middleware is just referring to if you have any integrated solutions. So the middleware would be something like for process orchestration. That's an on-premise middleware. For Cloud Platform, the integration suite, that's a cloud middleware. So that middleware is actually in the platform as a service arena. So the middleware basically making sure the availability of Cloud Platform that's hosting your middleware, this is taken care of by the service provider. In this case, for the middleware that's managed by the customer, that's process orchestration, because you have built custom process orchestration integrations using RFC connections or remote function calls to send typically IDOCs between applications. Okay. And then last, what we'll cover today is just this, and this might be something you want to screenshot and hold on to for the future. So when to use Solution Manager and other implementation tools during the activate phases, I tried to include a relatively comprehensive list here. Starting in the prepare phase of the implementation, you can use the project management capabilities in Solution Manager, which is the IT project and portfolio management. Thank you for sharing that. The focus build, which is optional, but you can also choose to use that. For explore phase, we're now beginning to, or we're using a system for the Fit to Standard workshops. So now we need to do the business process configuration. You can deploy using Solution Builder, best practices, or model company, which is effectively also best practices. Solution Manager process management is probably something you'll start using at this point in time. The Solution Manager test suite, and the Solution Manager test suite is for doing that end-to-end business process testing. The Cloud Platform Extension Suite, you would use starting around the realize phase, so building those extensions if we're following the cloud-based concept of building the more complex applications, integrations, and having them hosted in the cloud from a lifecycle stability perspective. Change control management. Change control management is to essentially check your system to coordinate the changes across the whole landscape to prevent any conflicts. Then you have your landscape management, which breaks into two different sections, custom code management and maintenance management. Maintenance management is really just the maintenance planner, which is a lot to do with upgrading your system landscape for the semi-annual upgrades, which is mostly taken care of, again, by SAP for you with those managed services. The Solution Manager service engagement and service delivery, IT service desk management, specifically SAP engagement and service delivery is how you're going to connect with SAP, collaborate on your service plan, issue management, SAP delivered services, guided self-services. You can access all of that through this component in Solution Manager. The IT desk service management is setting up your own internal service desk to manage incidents across customer business units, IT, SAP, and any partners that are supporting you. It's a open bidirectional interface tool that can send and receive incidents to other ticket systems as well. So that's really beneficial if a customer has outsourced or out-tasked the service provider tasks to a third party. Application operations has a huge amount of capability and functions, and that's a central location for system application management, central monitoring, alerting, analytics, and administering your SAP solutions. With business process operations, that's more focused on analyzing your existing business processes, the productive operations, and how you can also plan to enhance and improve those operations through the data and the analytics you're collecting. And then focused insights is optional, but that's that no-cost add-on tool with prepackaged KPIs and metric content, and then you can build additional customer-specific dashboards and content. Really a big benefit to your IT team to use. In the middle here with the data migration and integration area, so everything that's in blue is non-Solution Manager. Everything in yellow is Solution Manager. So you use the S/4HANA Migration Cockpit for data migration, regardless of the solution that you're implementing. If it's a new implementation or even a landscape transformation, you're going to be using the Migration Cockpit. With integration, you'd be doing process integration or orchestration, and then the Cloud Platform Integration Suite. So on-premise integration middleware is process integration orchestration, and then cloud-based middleware and other integration tools would be Cloud Platform Integration Suite. So we'll go ahead and stop here, and tomorrow we will pick up with, take a look at our agenda here. We're going to pick up with the Activate implementation methodology, and then briefly cover the training strategy, just so you're aware of the embedded available training tools just embedded in the system itself, and then get into configuration and integration. Okay, I'm going to throw some fun facts up on the screen and send you on your way. Thanks for spending 2 hours of your day with me. I hope you have an excellent rest of your Tuesday. And last call for questions. Oh, and one other link I want to send is the live session survey. Something our managers ask us to send out. You can also add comments. I review the comments about once a quarter. If you want to add things like what you like and anything you'd like to see in the future. I'll keep the session open for another minute or two. Thank you, everyone.